Stop the FOMO. You ever fear of missing out on what many consider possibly the best TV ever made by Sony, or at least you can buy? We are talking about the Sony A90J. Oh yeah, lots of hype? Okay, partly due to me. I've been hyping it up a bit. Anyway, the TV has now been looked at by many calibrators, some high-profile calibrators you may recognize, D-Nice, J-Ref, or John Reformato. Speaking of John Reformato, we had him on live stream. I've linked it below. But more importantly, on this live stream, he reviewed it, gave us our impression of this TV after it's been calibrated and after discussing his findings with D-Nice. And what's important is this, these points, summarized right here. I have linked the entire interview below, but I wanted to compress and summarize his thoughts over the course of these 12 topics. And at the end, we're going to talk about whether it's worth the $3,000, $4,000, or $8,000 you may be paying, depending on the size, for this TV. But let's listen to what John has to say about it. John, take it away.
Yeah.
And if you can, please introduce our guest calibrator.
Boy, I'll say this is the very well-respected John Reformato.
Yes.
And, John is a valued friend and a very valued asset of our company. And John is a degreed engineer. He's a level 3 ISF certified calibrator. He's a consultant and a beta tester to CalMan that produces the software.
Wow. I would love to hear, John, what your thoughts are on the improvements of the A90J over the previous Sonys that you've calibrated, namely that maybe the A9S or the A8H from last year.
So I'll be honest with you. I think we looked at 2 sets so far. That's why I was a little late. I opened up a second set to see what the panel variances were. And, I think this is a winner. I mean, the biggest thing that I noticed besides that it's brighter is that the specular highlights is something that we've never seen before. The processing, the TV's processor is, processing the image in such a way that it finds these specular highlights and it just lights them up. It's we're seeing videos that I've been watching for years, test videos, and we watch it on this set and we go, wow, look at that piece there. We never saw that before,
Wow.
Specular highlights are really super impressive.
Let's say real scene, realistically in a person's home, if they want to bump it up a little and not go crazy, what can they expect from the peak specular highlights now?
Well, if you put it in custom mode or custom pro 1 or 2, which is the reference mode, and you put the brightness up at max, on SDR, you're going to get between 450 and 500 nits, which is a lot. It's full screen,
Yes.
like huge,
Right.
We were looking at SDR content, it looked like HDR was so bright. It was blinding us. We had to bring it back down, right? So,
And just to comment, SDR, standard dynamic range, not HDR.
right.
So
Right.
cable content, things like that. Right.
So, and then HDR, you're going to get anywhere between 750 and maybe 780 nits, once the set's broken, peak luminance, and it varies, right? I think what's happening is that when Sony looks at the content that's doing the processing frame by frame, it's looking for specular highlights. And when you put up a static patch like we do, even if it's at 2%, I don't think it sees it as a specular highlight. So you're getting what the set thinks it should be producing. I have a feeling based on what we see when the content's running, because it's just so much brighter, that I believe that when it sees a specular highlight, we're probably going above that. I would bet we're probably close to 1,000 nits on the specular highlights. I mean, there's a Dolby Vision test video that you could buy, and it has this lady in almost pitch black, and she's got like sparklers, right? She's playing with sparklers. And right, Robert? I mean, it was blinding us.
It was spectacular. It looked real to life.
This set has a huge HDR impact.
Yes.
I mean, it really,
Yes.
when you go in, if you have a pitch black room and you put HDR on, and it's good HDR,
That's it.
Yeah.
It's really outrageous. We were able to put it in vivid mode and get that 1,300 nits like they got in China.
So it's confirmed. It can happen.
Yes.
But of course, everything is like turned up.
Right,
The brightness is all the way up. The contrast is all the way up. Every single enhancement that you normally wouldn't use is on high.
Hey, you know what? Just waiting for the A90J and have it come out and be this awesome and actually meet that hype in China, I honestly thought maybe they were doing something funky, but you
No.
got 1300 nits, right, John? I mean, that is confirmed in its vivid mode. You got it.
1300 nits. We actually got
Oh,
over that.
man.
Tiny bit.
We got a little over that, yeah.
What was that? What window size was that, John, when you got the 13?
10%.
10% window.
And if you go down to 5%, you get a tiny bit more.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, you don't really get that much of a difference between 5 and 10%. It's a little boost. I think the black, near black detail is a little better than before. Nothing's ever 100%, but it's a little better.
And the issue that LG's been struggling with is that near black luminance overshoot. Did you see any of that or nothing? No near lifted blacks?
I mean, I think D-Nice was able to make it happen, you know, by forcing it, so to speak, by finding super challenging stuff.
Right.
And that's no surprise, right? Because it's impossible. It's just the technology. It's the way it is, right? But with 99% of the other content, as long as it's good or it can't notice it, that's where you need to be, right? On this particular set, we haven't seen anything. It's the near black details. Even when I put my 10-bit brightness pattern up, looks great. It's like, you know, with the LG, I have to do stuff to make it get that way, right? With this, it's just there. You know, you calibrate the grayscale there.
And of course, color volume, color gamut has always been the weak point of an OLED, and specifically even the Sony OLEDs. Did you see an increase in either the color gamut or the color volume?
Yeah, so there's no question. I mean, we haven't measured it, but you could see it. When it gets really bright, it doesn't get washed out. The color volume was there. It was rich. You know, we didn't measure the color volume. I didn't have time, but you could see it. I mean, it's not even something that I need a reference. I could just see it right away, you know?
Now, as you guys are calibrating and the tea's running a long time, the biggest question is, oh no, is there going to be a burn-in risk? Do you find it to be hotter than the other TVs or other OLEDs you've calibrated, or about the same? Did you notice anything?
The temperature in particular.
Yeah, the temperature.
Running hotter because the panel is
brighter,
right? You know, one thing we noticed is like when you put it in vivid mode, even in custom mode, you know, you'll get a first read of maybe like 590 nits, and then it immediately, like a spike, you know, just goes up to 700, you know, which is unusual. And then, you know, and it'll start fluctuating because the heat, you know what I'm saying? And that's an indicator that the panel is getting hotter, you know, is heating up. I can't tell you where the ABL is set at, but it's definitely higher than 150 nits because we don't see it dim at all. And I was talking to D-Nice about this.
Really?
Yeah. And he went away, got lunch, came back, and it's still not dim, right? So it's definitely not dimming at 150 nits. Where it's dimming, we really don't know, but I'm guessing it's way higher. So if you're watching, you know, reference level picture mode, you know, between 100 and 150 nits, anywhere in between there, you're not going to see any ABL kicking in. On HDR, we still didn't see it, right?
No, we didn't see it.
We were playing really bright colors and it wasn't changing. So,
the ultimate hockey TV. I mean, that's the number one complaint is you watch sports or hockey
when you
or even games.
% full field white. I didn't see it dim.
No. So we've had a couple of people that have sets that, you know, they've looked at. You know, as I said, D-Nice looked at his set, and we had 2 sets we looked at today.
Yes.
And I could tell you this: we can't find any tinting at all.
Right.
You know that magenta tinting that you normally get?
Yeah, none.
We don't see any. On you know, on like 3 sets with like professional calibrators looking at it, right? No tinting.
They're very clean, the panels.
So that was good.
And so is the screen uniformity. The banding is very, very minimal.
So here's the other thing. So on one set, we brought the luminance down to 1%. And on the first set we looked at, it has slight vignetting on the sides, you know, on the very, very ends at 1%, where the set isn't normally linear. And when you get to 2 or 3%, it starts going away. On this other set I opened up, even at 1%, it's perfect.
Wow. And the Cognitive Intelligence XR that Sony made a big deal. So in the settings, what are you toggling to get that intelligent tone mapping exactly? And what effect does it have?
So it's 2 places, right? With the HDR, you have 3 tone mapping settings. You have bright, preferred. You have it's really basically bright, gradient, and off, right?
Okay.
And gradient is the reference mode. So, but it's just more than that setting, right? You know, once it's in reference mode, like the gradient preferred, and then you have the reality creation on, which is set at a normal level. It's not even on auto. It's on manual 20, which is Well, we always set it at. It's the combination of those things that the XR processor is using. You know, it's the picture processing. You're not physically turning it on or off. It's there. You know,
Okay.
it's there.
It's always working.
It's always
Yes.
working. Yeah. So it's not like on the LG where you turn on the AI Pro and you have all those different settings.
Right.
Any of that. It's just on. But the thing is, even though it's on, you know, when you look at the detail, like we were looking at a lady holding roses and stuff, it looks real. It's
Yeah.
almost like you could touch it, right?
Yeah.
You don't see any edge artifacts. You don't see any, you know, and maybe if you have test patterns, you could see it. But in real
Right.
life content, it's very film-like, and it's not overdone. It's literally perfect. This particular set, it's the way the picture processing is done on this new Sony. It's like geared to impact. It's accurate, but it makes everything seem real, you know, on the screen. So like you look at it and it's like your brain can't accept it at first, right? You know, so you like have to take a double take. I want to bring up one thing, some of the comments, and one comment was, well, with all this picture processing, there's got to be quirks, right? It's not like that. Okay,
Yeah.
this is what you have to understand, right? First of all, Panasonic and Sony, their picture processing, the experience that they have is like first class, right?
Yeah.
They're not like messing around with the picture. Their picture processing, what I mean by that is they're trying to replicate what the creator's intent was, right? So if you have a picture with like a lot of specular highlights or little or whatever it is, the overall presentation, the picture processing is making it look right to you. And it's making it look natural, making it look like the creator's intent, right? So it's not doing stuff to the picture to like make it more punchy or,
Right.
you know, to do things that would make people that don't understand what they're looking at potentially. Like, this looks great, right? It's not like that. It's making it look more realistic, right? It's like memory colors, right?
Mhm.
Look at skin tones, you could say, oh, this is wrong. Why? Because it's a memory color, right? Your brain knows what skin tone is supposed to look like, right? It's the same thing here. Your brain is going to look at the picture and say, boy, it looks like I'm looking out the window, right? You know, it's normal to me, you know? So so it's not going crazy, doing stuff to the picture to make it look all unnatural.
So this is it. It sounds like it took the OLED industry how many years now? This is where they were promising we'd be maybe 8 years ago. So I think
That's
people
right.
can start shopping OLED now, beginning this year,
Yeah.
for all those reasons. Okay. Well, what could you add, John, that you haven't mentioned yet for our viewers in terms of what you've seen on the A90J that is different than any previous OLED you've seen from either Sony or LG?
The specular highlights.
And the detail, I think.
Yeah,
as
and
well.
the sharpness. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, the A9G and the A8H had good sharpening, but if you really look close, it doesn't look right. You know,
There was a
it
little
looks-
bit of artifacts on the
yeah, it looks
sharpening.
overdone, right?
Yeah.
So it feels like it's 4K, but more 4K is what you're saying, right? I mean, it's like somehow this 4K looks like a downsampled 6K or something.
Well, you know what I think we could say overall is I think Sony really delivered on the picture processing. Okay, it is really good. It's very three-dimensional. It's super sharp. Don't see any artifacts.
And one quick thing about the heat sink, it's a very intelligent thermal heat sink
Yes.
they have. So other than just a plate, it actually has a way of measuring the temperature in different zones and dissipating heat more aggressively in areas where there's high peak lumens. So give it time to do all of that, and it'll work on dissipating the heat more equally to stabilize the temperature across the screen. And that will greatly reduce the threat of burn-in.
Do we have to manually pixel refresh, or does Sony take care of that? As long as you leave it plugged in, you turn it off, it does everything, right?
Yes.
After 4 hours. You know what's really amazing? On almost all OLEDs, we always have to do at least one manual pixel refresh
Mhm.
to get screen retention off and just to get it as best it's going to be. These sets, we didn't
Not
do anything.
these.
We just took them out of the box and turned it on.
They're clean, uniformity is
Wow.
great. Yeah.
Glowing praises indeed. And thank you so much, John Riformato and Robert Zimmer, for coming on and talking about this, what I think is a groundbreaking TV, not just for Sony, but for OLED in general. And yes, we'll have them back on to talk about the other amazing OLEDs coming out this year, the LG G1, and of course the Hollywood Select for the first time for sale to consumers, this HZ2000U that is hand selected for Hollywood reference client monitors that has been impressing John so much that he says the only TV better than this one is that one. So can't wait to have him on to talk about that at some point. And of course, if you found this informative, click like, and well, we're going to get a lot more of these later. Okay, value. Premium, is it worth it? In the context of all past flagship, of course the answer is yes. Keep in mind, 8 years ago, LG, 55-inch OLED, $10,000. Hello? Today, the best TV at 65 inches, $4,000. It's an OLED, way better than what LG released 8 years ago. And the value proposition is there. The premium is not even a premium relative to that. But let's talk about this year. What about the other flagships this year? LG's flagship is the G1 OLED, and it's a little bit less expensive because it's not meant to compete at a picture quality level. It doesn't have the heatsink. So yes, it is worth more than the G1. Number 2 is the Samsung. Its best TV at 65-inch size is the Neo QLED QN900A, $5,000. Is that TV worth $1,000 more? Heck no. I don't think so at all. So in the context of today's competition, $4,000, well, compared to Samsung, it's a discount, both at MSRP. But for you, is it worth it for you? It really depends on your use case. If you're putting this TV in a room full of glare, you've just really robbed yourself of the value of this TV because it doesn't have an anti-glare coating. Put this in a dark room, a light-controlled room, then yes, it's worth it. You put in a room full of glare, suddenly you can't, number one, enjoy the deep blacks that OLEDs are known for, and it's a bright room. Although it's brighter and may pop, a lot of that impact, the HDR impact we talked about, is lost in that brighter room. Get yourself a non-OLED TV and just blast away that light with light of your own, right? So it's your use case that applies. But, and this is just something that I have to mention, if you plan to light control your room, I cannot think of a better TV than this one, both in terms of pricing and performance. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe. There's more of this good stuff coming. And until next time, stop the FOMO.